Hello, and welcome to the East Africa Business Podcast. I'm Sam Floy, and I'm here on the continent to learn about the emerging business scene. I'll be interviewing startups, investors, and organisations who are all playing their part in helping the region develop and grow. And in doing this podcast, I'll be sharing with you the things I learn along the way. Smallholder farmers are the majority of the East African population, but there are many issues that they face. Rose, who founded Agrinfo, is using ICT to help. Identifying some key problems for Tanzanian farmers, she and her team are looking to improve the agriculture sector by utilising modern technology. We discussed the low number of farmers with a legal right to their land, the process for mapping Tanzania, and the benefits that come by knowing what is planted where. There's a bird tweeting outside the window at the beginning of the episode, and so apologies if you find that distracting. For now though, here is Rose and our discussion about Agrinfo. So I'm here today with Rose from Agrinfo. Rose, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sam.
So just to get us started, could you tell us a bit about you and a bit about Agrinfo?
Alright, so like you said, my name is Rose, my surname is Funja, and I started a company called Agrinfo that deals with smallholder farmers trying to find what are the challenges that the smallholder farmers are facing, and then use ICT as a technology to solve the challenges that these farmers are facing. So that's our whole concept. We work with farmers associations, and then we find out what is it that they have in terms of challenges that could be solved by ICT solutions. So our company is an ICT focused.
See. So what are the main challenges that smallholder farmers face?
So one big challenge is that Tanzania, that is where I am based and where we're focusing right now, has a huge land, and farmers own big pieces of lands. But then you'll be surprised that only 10% of those smallholders would be farming on a land that they have a title on. The rest of them, they either inherit the land or it's just they've even bought, but then they do not have any certification of ownership of that piece of land. And what that means is that, one, they cannot use that as a collateral for accessing any finances. But two, Tanzania is mostly a patrilineal society, so that means it will be the father or the husband that has the total ownership. And in case of him passing, then you have the wife and the children who are rendered propertyless. So it could go back to the family of the husband or the father in that case. And then sometimes you have disputes in terms of boundaries because the boundaries are physical boundaries, but then no record is kept of them. So the problem is later on when somebody else inherits the farm, there's no original point to go on and say this is the boundary in case of neighbors. So it causes us a future dispute.
I see. So just so I have that right, 90% of farmers don't have a legal right to the farmland that they're working on.
Yes. So when you say legal, it's a bit, it is legal. There's no legal right. So it is theirs, but then you cannot confirm to somebody else that this is their piece of land.
And how can the 10%, what's different about them?
Well, so the big problem is that the surveying costs are very high. So when you buy, if you compare the price of buying a piece of land, let's say 1 acre, and surveying it, the surveying cost will be twice or thrice as much as the buying.
Really?
Yes.
Why is it so much more expensive?
Oh, like I said, that Tanzania is big, and for surveying you have to bring equipment to the place, to the physical place. You also have to hire professionals to come and do the surveying. So because our country is huge, then that means they have to travel a good distance, they have to find accommodation, you have to pay for that professional time for them to do the surveying. So if it's one person who's doing the surveying, you have to pay for all that cost. The hiring of the equipment, the professional time for them to be there and do the mapping, and then the final process for them to have the signatories in the certificate.
I see. And so how has Agrinfo been able to help this challenge?
So what we're doing actually, we're bringing in a mobile technology. There is an application that is called Mobile Application for Securing Tenure. And that means instead of hiring the heavy total survey equipment, you end up using a mobile application in Android smartphone. And then also instead of you bringing in a professional from, let's say, city center, you can, bringing in a number of them, you can just bring in one, and then they do community participation. So you bring in a group of secondary school students who you can train for one day on how to use the mobile application. And after that, they can map as big areas. Probably, let's say, if one student maps 10 farms, then you have 10 of them, you've already mapped 100 farms. So it reduces the time, it reduces the cost of you doing the survey and bring the overall cost down. What we're also doing is we're going in convincing the whole village to take part in the exercise. So that it's not a cost of only 1 or 10 people who wants to do the survey. You have 100 or 200 villages who wants to take part into the survey. And what we're doing is we're partnering with an agribusiness agency, and their interest is to have an agribusiness village. That means starting a project within village land where they do chicken farming, fish keeping, bees keeping. And the offer that they give is that the villagers who cannot afford to pay for this small survey cost, then they can take a loan by being partners within the agribusiness village. And the proceeds that are coming from this agribusiness village will pay for that cost. So we're trying to bundle up so that the villagers see the importance of them owning land, see that most of the land that they own does not remain idle, but it gets utilized either in a business in which they will be lending land, and then this agency will bring in all the other inputs and also bring in the markets in terms of people who will buy the produce, the chicken, the eggs, honey, and all that from that village.
I see. And just quickly going back to the surveys, it sounds like quite an operation. Can you talk me through what it would take, or what it does take, to conduct a survey of a plot of land?
Okay, so in Tanzania we have a law that allows for the village to have the custodianship of the village land. That means the local government can decide who to give which piece of land. And in that case, so the first thing we do is we go to association of farmers and we let them know how land is important and how ownership is also important. And then those who subscribe to our service, they pay a small initial fee. And then we task them with the task of them introducing us to the local government where their farms are. And then once we get this introduction, what we do is we go and talk to the local government, again giving them the education, why it is important for them to map out and to give every other villager their own piece of land and have a legal document attached to it. When they understand this, we ask them to call a general village meeting in which they talk to the villagers, and those villagers sign up to this exercise. So once they do that, we take the minutes. We send it to the what we call like a district level leadership, and then now we sit down with the village, the local government. We plan out, given their village. They have to have a documentation that says what are the boundaries for the village, and then they also have to come up with a documentation that demarcates the land use. They have to have a plan for the land use. Where are they putting a hospital? Where are they putting some schools? Which places are going to be homes and what type of homes? Once we have that down, then all the subscribers for this mapping have to be recognized as as the legal owners as it stands within the village. Once they recognize them, then that's when we go out and map. And then after that, the law requires us to sort of gazette it. We publicize what we've mapped out so that if there are any problems there, or if there's anything to be sorted out, then it does get sorted out, and then after that the certificates are signed out, and that's about it.
See. And so how long does this process take from first meeting through to it being published in the Gazette, or everything being, the certificates being given out?
Close to 3 weeks to a month, but then the earlier experience is that there are some villages which it has taken them up to a year for them to get a certificate. So I think we're doing pretty well with the month, because the month time does not happen because of the speed of work that we do, but because it's mandated by the law. There's 2 weeks in which you have to advertise, so that has to be observed as well.
I see. And so is it that you send a team in, like a hot team, a team that goes in, and then they basically just live in the village essentially for that month, or how does it work?
Yes, you do send a team in, but it has the team is mostly the technical team, because the rest of the mappers will have to be obtained within the villages just to cut down the cost. Yeah, so we invite some of the secondary school students who understands what a smartphone is to come in for the training, and then they help out in the mapping.
Great. So how many villages have you mapped?
So we are into one village, but then we're already in the schedule to go into at least 3 or 4, and we're working with this agribusiness company that is going to go into 48 villages to come.
So you've got one in the bag, one's already on, a couple that are scheduled, and then about 50 that are in the pipeline. I see. And when you look at your sort of total market size, so to speak, how many villages can you go after?
All right. So I wouldn't have a number for that, but this is what I would say. Hardly, like I said, hardly 10% of this huge country is mapped out. And the way we're looking at it, we're not only ending at mapping out. We're looking at having a capacity to give an insight to inputs and output suppliers in terms of what they can find on the ground without them being on the ground. That means once we map out, once we have a couple of number of farms that are mapped out, the next thing is we're going to keep up a periodical update of what is happening in those farms. So let's say if they are planting maize, and to what amount of maize, and when they expect to harvest. And this is so that the inputs and output suppliers, those who are going to buy from the farmer, and those who are selling the farmer some of the inputs, manure and seeds, so that they know what is the demand on the ground. What is happening is that we have a larger population of these smallholder farmers who are in the rural area. And most of the businesses are within the urban area. And the infrastructure in between are not necessarily the best. So sometimes, I'll give you an example. So we talked to some traders who are buying sesame from in the south, like Lindi and Mtwara. And this is what they actually do. They invest in looking for the information. So once they have, let's say, they know that the export market needs certain tons of sesame, during harvest time, they have to send people to go and camp in certain villages so as to start collecting sort of information, and also the harvest itself, so as to sum up into that order that they need to export. They invest in this sort of, this is how they work. So in the end, the smallholder farmers get to pay for the cost of accommodating these people who are camping in the villages for a couple of months. So this is a cost that also the smallholder bears but then it's not directly, so it's not being seen because most of the time, most people have been saying that the farmer doesn't get enough, and what happens is the trader takes all the profits. But the trader also incur a lot of cost, and this is why they buy very low prices. So we're coming in and saying that once we map out in our villages, we want to be the ones who are sending out this information earlier on so that it reduces some of the costs that this smallholder has to bear at the very end.
I understand. So in simple terms, I mean, how will you be able to sort of, I kind of get how you'll get to know it at the beginning when you do the initial survey, but how are you then able to get updated data?
So we're looking into SMS solution, to USSD solution, or a certain way of using a mobile phone because they're accessible. And that will be, we are trying to fit out what is the value for the smallholder is going to be in this place. But then we want to use the mobiles to collect this sort of information periodically.
When you say using mobiles to collect the information, how is the information
collected? Yes. So let's say if my plan is to go and plant 1 acre of maize, I can already tell you that this is my plan using a USSD. Yeah, I can go into a phone and say that this is my plan to do that.
So the USSD is kind of like an SMS.
Yes, so it's unstructured.
But it's kind of you basically.
It's almost like an SMS, but then it's available in every other phone. They kind of you dial star a certain certain code, and then it'll give you questions in which you'll be giving the answers.
But it's the important thing is you don't need a smartphone for
no,
it.
No, you don't.
Okay.
Yes,
sorry, I interrupted.
That's okay. That's okay. So it's a sort of questions that will be asking the farmer, and the farmer will be replying to those questions, and behind the scene we'll be collecting the statistics, understanding what is the plan, and probably we can get an update when they're mid-season, that is it going well according to the plan. So that in that case, that means at a certain period of time, you can query the service and say, oh, in terms of maize, then we have maize in these areas, and this is the amount of maize that is in these areas. And that's an answer that a trader would need, who comes in and say, I want to buy maize. I want 10 tons. Where do I get 100 tons? Where do I get 1,000 tons of maize? So that's our plan. But I think we're still not very clear on how we're going to provide the value for the incentive for them to bring up this information to us.
Mm.
But I'll tell you one thing. I've gone to the village once, and while there, I realized it was time for them to harvest sesame. And they kept telling me, we're looking for market for sesame. We're looking for better market and better prices. Then I said, okay, that is okay. I'm going back to town, but then I can't just go back and tell them a story. I need some data. So I printed out some forms, some physical forms, then I asked them to fill. They were asking for those, everybody was asking for those forms. So in the end, I had almost 1,000 forms that I filled into just explaining what is the harvest they have for sesame. So when I came back, I was a bit overwhelmed. I'm like, what do I do with these 1,000 forms? That means I have to input data into another system. So that's what happened. But then what I learned from that is that people are willing to tell you what they have once they have a need, once they understand what they're getting at the end of it.
I see. So you sort of think that the incentive will come from being able to communicate that the more data they share, the more access to market they'll get.
Yes.
I see. How are other companies or how are other organisations trying to solve this problem? Or is this, or is there, or how is it that farmers currently go to market if there's not other organisations looking to help?
Okay, so one type of solution that I've seen is the one where they can check prices over the phone. So I've seen that one, but then the problem is that yes, you're up in a rural area somewhere where, like I said, the infrastructure is not so good. And then you're able to check in your mobile that sesame on the market can sell at this high price and this low price. But still, it doesn't really help you move your sesame to the market. It's an information, yes, but then it's still not enough because most traders are buying in volumes. So you find for smallholder farmers, they'll probably have, we measure it in terms of sacks. So they'll have 10, 20 sacks. That's it. Transporting that to where they could sell, it's very expensive and it's something that they cannot afford. So what happens is they'll just sit on it and then they'll wait for people to come to buy from them. So I don't think that's a solution, knowing what is the highest price I can get on the market. It's not a solution for every other smallholder farmer. It's only a solution to people who can afford the transport and probably they have a much bigger volume. Or maybe those ones who are able to come together and put together a bigger enough volume to transport. Another solution that is I've seen people who are mapping in terms of what should you call English is not easy, right? So like these places where you put in common harvest and then they stay for a long time. A storage, a warehouse,
Yeah.
exactly, a warehouse. So that's another place of a solution that I've seen, and they'll be putting it in a warehouse. However, you find that for that smallholder farmer, they want to see the immediate benefit. This is a farmer who has farmed for the past probably half a year, 1 year. They've been putting money on the ground. And right now they're being asked to go and put it in a warehouse. They still have not realized the immediate value. They have kids to send to school, they have to eat. So that's still not very accessible to every other one of them. It's just still those who can still probably they have another engagement and then farming is an extra activities for them. It's not the sole primary activity.
I see. What has been the biggest surprise you've had since starting Agrinfo?
One is the need in the village. The need is really, really high. And then also, the farmers have had a lot of stories from different people. So sometimes trusting it's not very easy. You really have to prove yourself over and over for them to open up and start engaging on conversation. Um, so like I said, the need is very high. There's so much to do in agriculture, and then I'll tell you another story. So I was in Sengerema earlier this year, and once I got there, we were talking about all these ICT solutions and everything, and then some farmers just sat me down and say, you know what? We also have other problems. And I'm like, okay, so what is the problem? I say, look, they are farmers for cotton. So they said before, so there's a body that regulates cotton as a crop within Tanzania. They said before that they used to spray their cotton. They used to spray a certain powder, sort of spray for the cotton to do well, and that was okay with them. But then right now the board has taken out that spray of powder. They brought in another sort of a liquid that they need to what would you say, to dilute. They need to dilute with water and spray, and they spray with something that you wear on the back. Apparently they say it does well in killing the insects and everything. And that was fine, but then the implementation part of it is really, really bad because water is scarce in that area, and so you need to fetch, and the dilution is very high. So for, let's say, less than a liter, you need a whole 20 liters container that you need to carry on your back, and that will spray in less than an acre. So they need to do a lot of trips only for water. So the practicability of that solution, although it's the best insect killer in the market, but the practicability of it is not there. So they have all these small problems that sums up into something very huge. So you wouldn't know why agriculture is not doing so well, but then it's just because of very minor little things. Yeah. And part of it could just be information from, like the information flow. I'm sure if the body understood this, then they would change that sort of insect killer. So sometimes it's just the information flow. Those who decide and those who are playing in this the value chain, they may not be able to talk to themselves. Maybe it's distance, maybe it's something else. So that's why we're trying to play a role of information, so that in this value chain, they can know what the farmer is doing, what is good for the farmer from the farmer's mouth. Like I said, collecting data from the farmer directly. And then whoever is either inputs or output suppliers, they can make decision accordingly with the farmer in focus.
Okay. Cool. I should just say that the guys next door are playing some music, so apologies if we get some background noise. Cool. Okay, so sorry, so we'll just do a few more questions. That's okay. So I definitely am convinced that you're right. There is a problem here that to be solved. Okay. Can you just clarify, how do you make money?
All right. So money there's several ways in which you make money. The first one, already in the CCRO, which is the title deed, what we call Certificate of Customary Rights of Occupants. Right now, the farmers pay for their service. So we're just reducing the price. So we're still getting paid in the very same way. When it comes to information collection, like I said, we're still trying to figure out how to incentivize the farmer to be contributing. But we look at it that we'll be able to sell this information as a business insights to the input and output suppliers. That's what we're looking at. We want to build a sort of a Tanzanian Google, a go-to place for agriculture information.
So Agrinfo just becomes like a search engine.
Yeah.
For these sorts of things. Got it. Okay. And is there a particular thing in the next 6 months that you're sort of like particularly looking forward to?
That I'm looking forward to?
Within the Agrinfo context.
Yes. There's something that I'm looking forward to early next year. And this is, we're looking into a partnership in which we're going to be using drones for advising farmers. These are at least a little bit of larger scale and small scale farmers who are growing, let's say, maize and wheat. Advise them on how much fertilizers needs to go into certain areas of their farm. So how does this work is that the drone has a sensor. That sensor takes a certain image, and that image gets analyzed by an algorithm. And once you analyze, because the algorithm has been fed into recognizing the image and recognizing the fertilization, the NPK, then it can tell you that within the farm, this corner has less, that corner has more. So accordingly, you can say in the places where it has enough for the maize to grow, you shouldn't add any more. But in the corner that it has less, it's time to add some more fertilizer so that it saves the farmer some fertilizer costs.
Awesome. Cool. And so when you look at what Agrinfo might look like in 5 years' time, what do you see?
I see as a reference within the region to, let's say, right now, if somebody tells you, do you know where I can find XYZ? If you're within Tanzania or within any other area, the first thing you will do is, oh, I've got my phone, let me check out here. And then probably if you cannot find out, then you try and ask somebody else. So I see it be a go-to place where people can say, oh, do you know where I can find maize? Or do you know where I can find XYZ? Anything in the agriculture space, I see it being the reference. Or people finding, let's say I'm looking for a farm, I want to plant some ginger. Where can I do that? Then they have a place to go to online to get this information. Because it has been missing. It has been missing not only to smallholder farmers, but to the local investors. People were working and wants to invest in agriculture. It's been noted that it's one place where investment can do so well. However, the information is not available to everyone as to how and where. So you find that most people will first buy a farm and then they're like, what can I plant here? It should be the other way around. You should first find out what you need to cultivate, what is needed on the market, and then next thing is say, oh, that crop does well in this place, and that's where I should go and look for a farm, be it that I am renting or I am buying. So that's what I see it being an answer to all those questions.
And how can people listening at home follow this journey?
We have a website. It's called www.agrinfo.co.tz. Agrinfo is with a single I, so it's agrinfo.co as Kampan and .tz as Tanzania. We also have a Facebook page, AgriInfoTZ. We also have a Twitter account, AgriInfoTZ.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Rose, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam. Nice meeting you.
We've just shook hands. Before we head, just a quick moment to say thank you for listening. You can see the show notes of this episode by heading to samfloy.com/podcast and then searching for the episode title. That's samfloy.com/podcast. Now, a few people have got in touch and have been asking about how this podcast came about. And well, it all started when I took a one-way flight to Rwanda to seek out business opportunities across the region. I'm now at the stage of formulating a bit of a plan of the business I want to go into based on all of these podcast interviews, and we'll be keeping a record of what I get up to on my blog. And so if you're interested in being kept in the loop, you can sign up to the newsletter there. Again, it's samfloy.com. Also, if you have any questions, comments or feedback about the podcast, or indeed anything, please feel free to email me, podcast@samfloy.com, and I'd be very happy to chat. In any case, have a great week and speak to you soon.